while we were struggling, Howard Schultz was out here buying yachts and going all across the country and buying up other companies, and we just simply asked for a raise.
Good morning, Libretta. Welcome in our studio Solidair. I'm so proud that you're here to talk to us about a new generation of unionized workers in the United States. But before we start, can you please introduce yourself a little bit more to us?
Yeah, so my name is Libretta. I'm from Memphis, Tennessee, United States. I am also a part of the Memphis 7 workers that were fired in Memphis, Tennessee for trying to start a union in our store. And I'm here representing Workers United.
When did you start working at Starbucks?
I started working in December of 2020, and so right in the middle of the pandemic, everybody was masked up, and it was, a little scary going into there. Everybody knows the complicated Starbucks drinks, and so I was a little nervous, but I got the hang of it pretty well. But yeah, it was in the middle of pandemic, so a lot of workers were constantly getting sick, and we had our stores closing a lot, so it was just a lot of pressure.
I can imagine that was a lot of insecurity. So because you're a Starbucks expert, I have to ask you this question. What beverage would you recommend to us?
Well, what I usually drink is a brown sugar oat milk latte, iced. I hate hot coffee. So I say any iced coffee is great.
I can imagine a little bit of sugar is good to give you some energy for this whole campaign of unionization. I also heard that the union and social struggle, it's in your DNA. Mm-hmm. I heard that both of your parents are unionized and that your grandfather was protesting alongside Martin Luther King. Can you tell us something more about that?
So as you said, my grandfather, he was a civil rights activist in Mississippi. It was very big in Mississippi, civil rights activism. And so he did a lot of sit-ins and marches and things of that nature with Martin Luther King. And that kind of spearheaded, I guess where I pull it from, my union activism. And both my parents are unions. My father is in a union at my school at the University of Memphis, and my mother is in a teachers union. So yeah, you could say it's in my DNA. I pulled it from them.
I can imagine that's a motivating environment to grow up with. I heard that it's your first time in Belgium.
Yeah.
So you already tried the Belgian waffles.
Yes, they're really good.
That's really great. Good. I heard the chocolate has still to be delivered.
Yes, I gotta get some chocolate.
So let me explain something more about Belgium. Here in Belgium, we have a strong tradition of workers being unionized. But I heard that's very different in the United States. Mm-hmm. But over the last decades, something is changing. More and more people are getting a member card of the union, and you are one of them. Can you explain to us what triggered you? Why did you become a member of the union when you worked at Starbucks?
Our store, we really had really bad management, with management not helping us when we asked them to fix broken coffee machines or to fix electrical issues, to fix and help bring more structure to the COVID policies that we had in place, which was like having customers wear masks more, sanitizing the store whenever the workers would contract COVID, to have them stay out longer and to also get paid for staying out because you're sick. We were just sick and tired. They kept taking things from us, and we didn't like that. So we decided to unionize. It also helped that we saw the Buffalo stores in Buffalo, New York. They were the first.
They were the first,
yeah, they were the first
ones to get unionized.
Yeah. And so when we saw them win, we were like, oh yeah, we can do that too. It started from there. It was very fast, very quick, and that kind of what spurred us.
Yeah, I can imagine that suddenly you have done this idea, let's get unionized, yes. But it's not that easy to start with. Yeah. How did you organize at your Memphis store? What did you do exactly to make that happen?
My store, we're like a huge family, and so we're super close with one another. We hang out all the time outside of work, so it was fairly easy for my location to unionize. We talk to each other constantly. We have this huge store group chat, so it was very easy to communicate with one another. It started out with my best friend, Nikki Taylor. She was like, hey, Libretta, do you think we can get a union in our store? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Since I knew nothing about unions, I had her explain it to me and list the benefits of a union. union, I thought it was a great idea. I was like, yeah, we need that. And so me and her and the rest of Memphis 7, we talked to the rest of our coworkers, and everybody was down for it. So it started just like that.
Yeah. You just talked about the bad management in your store, how they weren't helping you during COVID with guidelines and how to manage the store. Were there other working conditions that were a trigger for you, that Starbucks is not respecting the workers' right on the working place? How is that in your Memphis store on everyday working life?
We would get shocked from the coffee machines just by touching them because the electrical outlets were hazardous and dangerous. There were hanging wires hanging in where water goes. And so, water and electricity does not mix. And so we would get shocked all the time. Uneven tiles on the floor, people would twist their ankles and break their legs all the time. It was crazy. Cabinet doors falling on people's heads and shoulders. It was a lot, and we asked them to renovate our store to make it more up to date and safer, and they were just like, no, you don't need that, you're fine. And we were like, no, we need this to help our workplace and to serve customers better. And so they were just unavailable to do that, so we got a union.
You talk on the one hand about these working conditions that are very poor, safety issues, health issues, and on the other hand, Starbucks as a company is making billions of dollars of profits, even increasing after the pandemic. So the whole pandemic, when you were suffering to make these guidelines work, they were increasing their profits. Is that something that plays a role in the motivation of your group, of your working? How do you look at the sky-high numbers?
It makes us very upset, the fact that Starbucks tripled their profit while all their workers were suffering. They, in the beginning, had free food and beverage for the workers, and they took that out in the middle of the pandemic. And a lot of the workers relied on that food and drink because we're poor people and we can't afford groceries. You have to choose between paying your rent or buying groceries for yourself or paying for health insurance. While we were struggling, Howard Schultz was out here buying yachts and going all across the country and buying up other companies, and we just simply asked for a raise, and they didn't want to give that to us, and so it was very difficult and very hard.
That was just unnegotiable.
Yeah, no negotiation at all. No.
I can imagine it's frustrating.
Yeah.
I went on TikTok, and on TikTok there are so many videos where workers testify about the reaction of Starbucks when they're trying to start a union. It's really bad, from intimidation. I was wondering, what was the reaction in your case? So you decided with the Memphis 7 to unionize. Yeah. What was the reaction of the management and Starbucks? At
first, they pretended like they didn't even know it was happening. They were clueless, you would say. But very soon after we did the news interview in our store on January 18th, so a day after, we went public and posted our letter that we wanted to unionize on the internet. We did a news interview the next day. They asked us, the basic questions, why you want to unionize, things of that nature, and we did those things. I guess they weren't too happy about what we had to say about that. And the next week, they told us, oh, you can't do that, and they made it seem like we broke all these rules. That's how they ended up firing the 7 of us at our store. So at first, they acted like they didn't know anything about it, but they were probably scheming, in the background to figure out a way to get us out of there, because they knew that if we remained in that store, that without a doubt, we would have 100% support of the union in that location and in the city. We were powerhouses, and they had to get us out of there at one point, and they did.
In the end, you were fired. Was it something you expected to happen, having seen the reaction of Starbucks on other stores trying to get unionized? Were you in any way prepared for that?
We weren't prepared. We didn't think they would fire us. We were prepared more so for increased surveillance from upper management to surveil us. We were expecting more aggressive customers. We were expecting for them to nitpick and pick things to write us up for. We were not expecting to be fired. But it also didn't really come as a huge shock. It was an initial shock shock, like, oh my God, I got fired. But
yeah, how did it make you feel? Because it's a huge thing to get fired.
Yes, that was my first time ever being fired from a job. Like, I
can imagine.
Yeah, I'm a great worker. I've never had anything on my record. And so to just go from being like the perfect worker to being fired, I was a little upset about that, because I know my work ethic and I know the other Memphis 7 work ethic. We're great workers, and for them to fire us, it was heartbreaking at first, but we got over it very quickly.
Yeah, indeed, you got over it quite quickly, and you decided to go to court, you and the union.
Yes.
How did that go?
So we did win our jobs back. Yay. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah. So we just won our jobs back. They have to let us go back to work. They also have to give us the hours that we were working before, because when we were unionizing, they started cutting our hours. Yeah. And so they have to put us back at the hours of working, so 40 hours a week. And they have to give us all our benefits and any raises that they've given from when we were fired up until now. So they did get a raise, so we automatically get all of those benefits applied back.
Yeah. And I can imagine it's not that easy to go to court as a single worker. Was it the union supporting this whole trial, or how did that go?
Yes, the union has been a huge support. That's why we weren't so worried about being fired, because we knew our union had our back. They told us, you do what you got to do, we got you. And so that's what they did. They made sure our bills are paid. Yes, they made sure we were okay. And in return, we continued to help them unionize more locations. Yeah, it was awesome.
You already mentioned it. You got your job back. You won this fight against the mighty multinational. What's the situation now in your shop?
So right now we're working with upper management, with our manager, to find a day that we can come back to work. We've already handed in our reinstatement letters saying that we all do want to go back to work, because they tried to paint a picture that we didn't want our jobs back. It's like, oh, you talk so bad about the company, you don't want your jobs back. We do want our jobs back. We're waiting on them to give us a date to come back, and we're just going to see how it plays out.
That's great. So in the meantime, I believe already 260 Starbucks shops are unionized and still counting. Yes. You could say like it's a fast spreading virus.
Yes.
It's a good one though.
Yes.
Is that something you constantly work on to spread this unionization, to enhance this evolution? How do you do that?
We use social media a lot to our advantage. I think that's what's helped us a lot. And with our generation, with my generation per se, we use social media for everything. And so it definitely helps to talk to other stores and to spread the word. As you've seen our TikTok, and that's how we get people engaged with unionizing, especially in Starbucks, because people don't think Starbucks, when you think of union, you don't think Starbucks. You think Starbucks is like the perfect company, and it's definitely not. So we use social media to our advantage. Twitter is our best friend. We put everything on there, and TikTok as well is our best friend. We make a lot of silly videos, but they're very important and very informational if you pay attention. Yeah.
In the meantime, also, I think in March 2022. Howard Schultz, the founder of Starbucks, he returned as a CEO with a clear goal of slowing down unionization. Has that changed anything since he's back?
Yes, a lot of new policies have been created to target union stores.
Could you give some examples of that?
Yes. Before we could talk to media, news crew came into your store and wanted to interview you. You could interview with them. Now you can't. They have to talk to your manager, and then the manager has to send them to the Starbucks media person. And if you do talk to media, you'll get written up. You also aren't allowed.
And is that something that's legal?
No, it's very illegal. Starbucks doesn't care that it's illegal though. They just do whatever they want to do. Everything they do is pretty much illegal. It's illegal to fire workers for trying to unionize. They did that. It's illegal to deny benefits to union workers. They did that as well. It's illegal to give some of your workers raises and not all of them. That's illegal. It's illegal to close your store down, like to close locations down because of the strong union in that location. They don't care. They have the money to pay those fines. So they will use all of it to stop the union.
Are there other examples of new policies that he's implementing right now in Starbucks?
You're no longer allowed to wear your union shirts. Like, I couldn't wear this shirt to work. They would immediately write me up and send me home, which is also illegal in the United States. You're allowed to show union representation in your store. Like, you're allowed to wear pins. We wear them big. We like them to show really big, bigger than our other pins on our aprons, and they didn't like that. So now they made a rule to where your pins have to be the size of a dime, which we know nobody can see that, and they know that too. They're very nitpicky on just small mundane things. Yeah.
I want to talk some more with you about the things that make it possible to win a fight like this. Like, obviously, you already told us you had a big support of the union, but I think public opinion is also very important. And I wonder, you as a 23-year-old living through this whole story, what did your friends, your family think about it? How did they react?
My family, they're huge support. They were all for it because my parents, like I said before, they're in the union, and my grandfather, like their father was doing things like this, so they're used to it, and they supported me 100%. Most of my friends are the friends that I work with at Starbucks, so yeah, they understood. Friends that were outside of Starbucks, they really didn't get it. They support me, but they don't really, get or understand what it is I'm doing, like why I'm fighting so hard for a company that does all these things to me and that fired me and talks so bad about me. I'm like, it's not just about me. It's about my friends and my family at work, and they deserve better. If I can't get it, I'm gonna make sure they got it. I want to make sure everybody's okay. Yeah,
that's great. Do you feel like public opinion changed during this campaign? Do you feel like there's something shifting in the United States about how people look at unions, at workers who are unionizing?
Yes, I do think it's shifted a lot. Usually you would see older people, especially older white people, that are 100% a union, which is totally okay and fine. But now there's a lot more younger people my age. So 20-year-olds, even younger than me, 16-year-olds. I know a lot of 16-year-old like union representatives, and I'm like, that's so crazy. You're in a high school. Yeah, I think that the age demographic is changing. The race demographic is changing. We're seeing a lot more people of color coming to the stage and coming to the front. And so I think it's awesome to show that big diversity of interest, because everybody deserves fair treatment.
That's great. Yeah. So you already mentioned the social media and how you try to use it to influence public opinion and to get support for your campaign. Yeah. How does that work exactly?
With regular social media, to get the audience's attention, you have to pick something that's trending. That's usually what we will do. We'll pick like a trending song or a trending action that we see on TikTok or any social media, and we'll just incorporate it some way into the union, whether it's giving new information or benefits that the union could help people with, whether it's explaining like what the company, like a recent policy change that the company's done to us, what other workers that are being fired, we also put them on that platform to get more awareness out for that, to show like it just didn't stop with the Memphis 7. There's like now over 80 fired workers. We put all of that on social media for the world to see, and I think it has changed the perspective of everybody thinking that Starbucks is like one of the best companies you could work for, because that is not the case behind the scenes.
You also talked about using this social media as a tool to enhance the solidarity between the shops.
Yes.
And we can also see it on social media. There is a lot of solidarity from shops all over the country.
Yes.
How is it organized, and is that something you specifically work on?
Yeah, I do work on it a lot. That's actually what I do now. Now that I work for the union, since Starbucks fired me, the union hired me, is what I say.
That's a great phrase.
Yes. So I live on Zoom. It's like my best friend. I live on Zoom now, and it's the easiest way to communicate with stores across my country and like even internationally, to have different conferences and to bounce ideas off of everybody. So that way we can mesh well when we want to do like a big action. We can talk to one another so that it can go accordingly across the country.
That's great. So you have like conferences and a lot of personal contact also with other shops.
Oh yeah, I've never been to Buffalo, New York, but I know everybody that works there, and I talk to them on a daily basis. I also know a lot of people in Arizona. Arizona is like 12 hours from me. I've never met them in person, but I know them, and I talk to them all the time on a constant basis because of social media. Yeah,
that's amazing. You already talked about diversity and how the people who are getting unionized, their profile is changing. But I want to ask you a personal question on that. You as a young woman, and especially as a young woman of color, you must have faced some additional challenges during this campaign where you confronted sometimes with things like sexism, racism.
Yes. Even before now and a little bit now too. The demographic of Starbucks are mostly women, which a lot of people don't even realize or notice that, but it's about 70% women. And so
70%.
Yeah, 70% women from the whole company. Yeah, that work for the company. So it's a very heavy presence of women. We really have no choice but to put women on that, like to be leaders and put that on platform. But being as a woman of color, it is a little challenging and tough because we're not seen very often. I try to get and put us on a platform as much as possible, but with our campaign or just in general, like my race doesn't really care to do it. And so I'm trying to change that narrative and educate more, like my race deserves it too, and any other race of color deserves it as well. Like it doesn't have to just be for the white people. Like we deserve that too. We work just as hard and work beside them all the time. I think with us being women and myself just being a woman and a person of color, it has been a little bit of struggle in the beginning, but it's getting better slowly. We're slowly changing that narrative.
I can imagine it's also like an evolution that's enhancing another young woman, another person of color to take the leadership in a union. And it's great that you are such a role model.
Yeah.
To go to the end of this interview, I can imagine that this whole experience, like being fired, going to court, it must have been quite a roller coaster for you and your co-workers. What's the biggest lesson you have learned about our capitalist economy? Is this something you learned while having this campaign?
Yeah, a little bit. I've learned that there's a lot more poor people than what we think, and that really helps. I think that's really what's helped inspire this huge like wildfire is what I call it of unionization. I think the pandemic also showed that as well, with everything being closed down and people losing a lot of jobs and having to turn back to the what they call essential workers during the pandemic. So a lot of people having to turn back to those jobs, and then I think almost kind of humbling themselves and bring them back to, oh yeah, we like there's more poor people and we're all poor. I think that's like one of the main driving factors is that pay raise and health benefits, because you don't get a lot of the minimum wage doesn't grow every year like it's supposed to keep up with the change of the economy. I believe it's been well over like 10 years since we've had just a federal union minimum wage increase, and so now we're having to ask these companies that we know can afford it and that they just won't give it to us after we've tripled their profit like during the pandemic. You would think they would in return help and give us at least a little bit of something, but they won't. So we have to stick firm and stay strong, and no matter what the cost, just keep going, because you have to.
Yeah. Do you feel like the rights of the working class, that they will ever be respected in this economic system without social struggle, or is it something that we constantly have to engage to?
I think it's something we'll have to constantly engage. I don't think it will come easy or willingly. I do think we're going to have to fight it for the long run. Unfortunately, even though the working class is one of the biggest class, it's just changing people's mindsets.
We have the numbers.
Yeah, we
and
have the
I guess
numbers,
also
yeah.
the pandemic, like you told us,
Yeah.
it made people aware that they have the numbers and they have the power to keep
Yeah.
on going or to make it stop.
And the company needs us. We don't need the company. They need us to work. And so the numbers is a huge thing. I think we just have to change our mindsets. Just think logically. It's like the company, they're not doing everything they can for you. Like they can totally make healthcare free for you. They can totally give you $20 an hour, but they won't because they want to fill their pockets and not care about their workers and make sure their workers are okay. And so we now have to think, we have to take care of ourselves and take care of each other because we are in the numbers. And so I think people are now starting to realize that there is power in numbers. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of stores pop up. Once they get their store together, they're unstoppable.
So this constant fight for your rights, there are people saying that it's like impossible to win against a mighty multinational like Starbucks.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I don't think it's impossible. It's definitely difficult and hard, but I don't think it's impossible. You have to inch your way. You can't, it's not a fast-paced thing at all. It's a very slow, drawn-out process. You have to kind of almost coach and retrain the company to get them to do what you need them to do for you. So you have to show them that they need you by going on strikes and boycotting them and make them hurt in their pockets where they pay attention to it the most. And then you turn around and go for, their branding. And it's like, well, I'm going to, tell the public everything that you're doing to me because they think you're like this saint, and I'm going to show them, your true colors, and they don't want that. And so you kind of have to like coach them and train them into getting what you want and need, which has worked.
You have to keep the pressure.
Yes.
So one final question for you, Nebretta. What is your biggest dream for the future of the working class?
I hope to see everybody be in a union. I really do. I hope to see that people can create their own contracts and basically force their company to do what they need for them to do. We shouldn't have to go to work being fearful or going to work dreading going to work. You should enjoy going to work, enjoy what you're doing. And so I really hope that the working class grows and we're not considered the working class anymore. We're all just one big class, and that big corporations will stop taking advantage of their workers is what I hope, for sure.
It's a great statement to end this podcast with, and to continue our fight for a better future for the working class all over the world. I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing this impressive experience with us.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.